What if kindness isn't about being agreeable, but it's about being courageous? Today's world feels loud, divided, reactive, and kindness can feel like naive and Pollyanna-ish, or even sometimes weak. But today's guest argues the opposite, that kindness is one of the strongest and most transformative choices that we can make.
On this episode of The Opposite of Small Talk, we're joined by Shola Richards, a workplace civility expert, speaker, and author, whose work centers on building kinder cultures, starting with ourselves. Shola challenges the idea that kindness isn't just about being nice, and instead reframes it as a practice of strength, boundaries, and intentional action. Our conversation with Shola was so great. It just is what the world needs now.
It is. It is. I think we covered a broad breadth, and I think I mentioned this in the episode, but when you think about an episode on kindness, it does feel a little fluffy, but it's actually pretty deep. And we got into some conversations that give people practical ways to demonstrate kindness in the world that you can start using today. And then just interesting ideas about things like the difference between being nice and being kind. And, just maybe a new, fresh way of thinking about it and trying to bring more kindness into the world.
And I think one of my takeaway was, it has to start with you. And the kinder you can be to yourself, the kinder you're going to show up in the world. And so he gives us some great tips on how to do that.
And he touched very briefly on some research about how when you're kind to others, it benefits you as well. That was something I had learned last year when we did the happiness Yale course. The science of well-being. Kindness is one of the 7 behaviors that are promoted as a way to bring happiness to yourself. So if you weren't sure whether or not it was important for you to be kind for the sake of others, maybe do it for the sake of your own happiness. Enjoy our conversation with Shola.
Shola, welcome to The Opposite of Small Talk. We are thrilled to have you here today.
Oh my gosh, so pumped to be here. Thank you for, first of all, giving a platform to kindness. I mean, like I said kind of in the pre-show, it's not like the world doesn't need more of that right now, right?
We, I think, are desperately seeking it. So I'm very excited for this conversation today.
Right on.
We want to start by what we ask all of our guests is to tell us a little bit about themselves and how you've come to do the work that you do.
Oh gosh. All right. I'll try to keep it tight because it's kind of a long story, but growing up as a kid, I grew up in Amherst, Massachusetts. I'm an East Coast guy living currently in Los Angeles, California. But when I was a kid, I grew up bullied a lot because I had teeth that were super jacked up and not straight. Thank God for braces. And I had a speech impediment, so I stuttered a little bit. So the stutter, the jacked up teeth made me an easy target for the bullies. And I'm also what's called an HSP, which my therapist has kindly told me stands for a highly sensitive person. So I feel things very, very deeply, which makes things awesome until they're not, right? So when you're seeing the world on fire, it's really, really hard to manage that. This is important because as I got older, about 20 years after I realized I was being bullied relentlessly in elementary school and in junior high, I got one of my first jobs where I fell into a really super toxic work environment. And I won't bore you with the details, but it was awful. And these folks made it clear that I was not welcome there. And I fell into a deep depression. And I'm not using that term euphemistically, like, oh, I was super sad how they treated me. I was clinically depressed. And after about 18 months of working in this place, with all the accumulation of just feeling like I wasn't welcome places or people were just mean, I kept asking the same question for 20 years, like, why aren't people kinder to each other? And then my capacity for receiving unkindness topped out. I was like, screw this, man. And I said, I'm done. But I wasn't saying I was done with the job. It was so much darker than that. While driving to this incredibly toxic job, I decided on my way to that job, I was going to take my own life. And to be clear, because I think it's important when you talk about suicidal ideation, in my case, it wasn't an ideation, I attempted. As mentioned, I live in Los Angeles. And while driving down the 405 freeway here in LA, I attempted to drive my car off the overpass in an attempt to make it look like an accident. And for reasons I'm not quite clear on, super grateful for. Guardrail held. I came back in incoming traffic. And ever since then, I've been spending the better part of the past 2 decades, not just trying to unpack what happened at that moment, but to make sure that no one in this world, and certainly in our country, has to deal with that level of toxicity ever again. I'm an imperfect messenger. I'm doing the best I can, but I cannot sit back and allow unkindness to take the wheel, so to speak. So that's what started me on this journey to create a kinder world.
Thank you for sharing that story. There's so many things to unpack, but I'm particularly interested in the HSP because it's a term that I had come across a few years ago. And after reading a little bit more about it, I think my husband and my daughter are both HSPs. So can you just give listeners a little bit more about what that is and how it shows up for you and kind of colors the way you experience life?
Yeah, I actually have a question for you too, Kristy, about that in terms of your experience as well. But for me, it colors my life in a very specific way. So specific to me with unkindness. And I am hypersensitive to seeing how folks treat people in a way that is less than respectful. Like if I'm going, I travel a lot for work. I speak for a living. So when I'm in the airport and I see people berating the flight attendant or being rude to a server in a restaurant, like a lot of people can just shake it off. And I'm sitting here like, oh my God, like I cannot believe someone would speak to someone like that. Like that's not okay. And I perseverate on it. And it's really hard for me to separate the unkindness. I spend so much time focusing. This is kind of weird. I never really admitted this publicly. I spend so much time thinking more about the unkindness in the world than the kindness that is really uplifting and creates a better world. Because I see like, I can't believe someone just spat on a man who is experiencing homelessness on the street or like threw something at him. And I'm like, this man doesn't have a place to live. Like, I don't know. I get emotional thinking about it because it's really something that I wish some days I could just be hard skinned, just like, yeah, whatever, man. That's just life. Screw it, man. Hey, sucks to suck, and then just keep going. I don't have that in me, and there's times I prayed silently for that. And the question I was curious about, Kristy, is like with your husband, you like, did you figure this out, or did he figure it out? Like, how did that work?
I figured it out and it like completely unlocked and changed all of my perceptions. I never really understood, but there's a pretty famous book on this topic that lists out a set of
It's behind me.
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
And I read that and it just blew my mind. We'll reference it in the show notes, but I'll give you an example of how it shows up that I never understood. And then once I knew this, it made sense.
Please.
When our kids were really little, we would go to a diner, like a local diner, which is, a family restaurant, loud, it's the kind of environment where you would expect there to be kids making some noise, right? And my husband would be hyper vigilant in ensuring that the kids weren't disrupting other people, like hyper vigilant. And I never understood it because I was like, dude, it's the diner. Like what? Nobody cares if our toddler's like peeking over the side of the thing. Like, yeah, you don't want them interrupting their meal, but like it's not out of the line of expectation. But it was always super intense to go out to eat because of this, because he was caring for the emotions of every single person in that dining room. And so once I read, sort of learned more about it, I was like, oh, I see why it's such a big deal to him, because I'm not thinking about other people's emotions, which makes me sound like a jerk, but I'm not overly in tune with that.
I am your husband, okay? I mean, not literally, but it's so interesting because my wife is the same way. So I would go to a restaurant. We have two girls. They're now teenagers, but when they were little, I was so hyper-focused on, we're not going to be the ones causing disruption. We're going to be the most behaved people in this restaurant. And this is so wild, even when I'm in a parking spot, and when you go to your car and you're about to leave a very crowded parking lot and someone pulls up waiting to take your spot, like, I am like rushing
so
my
fast.
wife. Let's go! They're waiting, and it's like, dude, chill out. It's like they can wait. It's like I'm like, but what are we doing? Come on, buckle up. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's the feeling of taking on others' emotions. It's crazy.
So, Shola, the other interesting way that I realized very late in our relationship that it shows up at restaurants is he's thinking of the server's perspective of they probably want to turn the table so that
Yeah.
they can make more money. And so he's always like, let's go. And when I go out to dinner, I want to sit around and chat and I'll give a nice tip to the server, but I'm not rushing out of the restaurant. And so it's just like, it really never dawned on me that that was why he was like that. And suddenly I was like, oh, okay.
That's my
So
guy.
yeah, yeah. So it is very interesting.
So
It
you guys were
is. It
having the
is.
same experience. Your kids are probably around the same age on like opposite sides of the country. Like
Yeah.
the same thing was happening. You're both at diners and like
Mhm.
Shola's wife and Kristy are like, can we just relax? Calm down.
Yeah. But it was helpful to understand it because I feel like I'm less annoyed by it, is for lack of a better word, now that I mean, because it really was truly, I just didn't understand what was going on in his brain. So I think it's been good. And I don't know, but it seems like very difficult to be trying to manage the emotions of everyone else around you because you really do not have control over that.
None. And I think what we can do to make it a little easier is to focus on what I do have the power to control, especially like, hey, sometimes I'm the guy who, when I'm at a restaurant, I'll stack up all the plates and make sure they're all ready for the server when they come to clear them, or the hotel room. I make sure it's not a mess when I leave. But the downside to all this stuff is when you're dealing with the unkindness in the world, you're also, and this is the point that I really feel is the hardest, is you take on a lot of the emotions of the people who are suffering or struggling, who are scared, and who,
Yes.
quite frankly, don't know what to do. And that becomes extremely overwhelming if you don't have a plan to be able to navigate that. And so
Yeah. Do you
it's a lot.
do you find that people who are in difficult situations tend to be attracted to you because you are in tune with how they're feeling?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so much so that it actually happens in random places, like in line at the grocery store or sitting on a plane next to a stranger. And they're all of a sudden, they're like telling me their deepest, darkest secrets. And I have no idea if like I'm giving that vibe out, but
Must be,
maybe,
right?
but folks definitely share a lot with me. And I think, but my thing is I have to be able to take care of myself and replenish myself so I have the energy to continue to do this work.
Right? Right?
So tell us then, in a world where we are right now, which feels very unkind, what are the strategies that you have to protect yourself?
Oh, drinking lots of brown liquor is the first thing. Oh, that's a joke. No, I actually don't drink.
We're
No,
we're open to all strategies here.
no, I actually have some real practical ones, thankfully. I mean, it's funny because a lot of people, that's what they do, right? They maybe go to strategies that are maladaptive. So for me, I believe that if we're going to do something as serious and as important as creating a kinder world, the process has to be so freakishly simple, so easily repeatable that anyone can do it. Whether you're a Fortune 500 CEO, you got more degrees than a thermometer, or you're in elementary school. Like anyone should be able to do the process. The thing that I use, that I've used to kind of get myself out of depression. I'm still clinically depressed and still deal with this stuff, to be clear, but what's helped me to navigate all this stuff in this really strange world, which is a simple 3-step framework. Really, really simple. The first thing is to start within. And the reason why I start here is oftentimes, well, before I even get to the framework, I think the reason why I have a framework in the first place are why people are unkind. And that's where we really should start. Why are people
Yeah.
really unkind these days? There's 3 reasons. One is like, dude, I am too burned out. I'm too exhausted to even think about kindness. I'm just barely trying to get through my day. So kindness is an afterthought. The second thing I often hear is like, man, you know what? God, the world's a friggin' dumpster fire right now. What can I do to fix this? And the third thing is like, I'm just scared. I'm scared to take a stand against unkindness. See people getting canceled left and right, and I'm not trying to do that. So setting the stage, that gives you the framework. So the first thing is to start within. And this is like, if I'm too burned out, too exhausted to think about kindness, the one thing that I do is to really focus my energy on what I have the power to control in the most simple ways possible. Almost all of us do stuff that kind of weakens us, right? Excessive news watching, social media usage that's out of control, having boundaries that are non-existent, all these things. They don't go to therapy, don't prioritize rest. All these things are what it means to start within. So Yeah, I have a therapist. Yeah, I'm very, 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 one more, very strong about my boundaries. I've always found that the people who are most upset with you having boundaries, you see this all the times, are the ones who benefited from you not having any boundaries in the first place. So I'm very clear on having boundaries, whether it's my work, whether it's my time, even when it's people who need my help in terms of they're struggling. I have to have a really small container around when I can do this so I can make sure that I have the energy to continue to do this work. So, starting within with therapy, prioritizing rest, eliminating cable news watching in the 2024 election, presidential election to be clear, I made a decision after the results to stop watching cable news. And I have not watched a minute since. It doesn't mean that I'm not informed, but I don't need to be just chugging the fire hose of negativity in the need to stay informed. I've always found that the news that I need will find me. So, and it has so far.
I could
That's
not
the
agree
first thing.
more. I don't watch the news at all, and the things that I need to know, people tell me, or I find them out.
Right.
Or I can go to find my news and decide what I'm taking in rather than it being thrown in my face. And I didn't realize how sensitive I was to that until I was at my parents' house and my dad had the news on, and and he left the room and I was in another room, and I was like, I have to turn this off because it was just yelling things at me and the same thing again and again, that felt like it was like my nervous system was not okay with that on. And it was just by not watching that, I realized how much it does affect you. But when you watch it all the time, that becomes what is your norm. And that's not
Yep.
okay.
You talked about this. That's dysregulation, and that's what happens. And you don't realize the weight of what you're carrying until you experience the weight of its release. So once you stop doing something, and then you are away from it for a while, like, whoa, God, I feel better, and man, I have more energy, and my nervous system isn't like my sympathetic nervous system is not like freaking out constantly. Cortisol isn't pulsing through my veins, and then you go back into that environment. It's like, oh God, this is awful. It's like when you leave a toxic relationship and you're finally see this person again in the mall or something or in line at the bank and all those bad feelings come back. It's the same energy. And it's just like the ability to be able to realize that and separate from it is so critically important during these hard times. The second thing that I often talk about in the framework is this concept of just today. And this is like, dude, what can one person do to like fix the world? It's such a dumpster fire. I look at kindness as having this compound interest effect, like this ability to. I often hear people say to me, Shola, what's the point of doing this? The world's so broken. That's like saying, like, what's the point in showering? I'm only gonna get dirty again, right? We got to do something. And the something is so powerful. It could be something as a simple text to somebody, a kind action. And the science behind this has been very crystal clear. So serotonin, the neurotransmitter in our brain that helps us to kind of regulate our mood and digestion and things. It makes us feel safe and feel loved and all those good qualities. The power about this is that when you give a kind act to someone else or perform a kind act for someone else, the person who receives it gets a hit of serotonin. But also the person who's giving the act also gets a hit of serotonin. But most importantly, anyone who observes this also gets the same hit. So we're actually making the world a kinder place through these actions. And the idea of stopping and doing nothing. What's so funny about unkind people or kind people? Kind people are like, oh, should I speak up? Should I do anything? What's the point? Unkind people are not burdened with those questions, right? They're just out here just doing whatever the hell they want, saying whatever they need to. So we have to just consistently do those kind actions. And the final of the three framework points is to go first. This is the power of seeing issues, unkindness, wherever it happens to be, and being willing to do something about it. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to jump into fights with people and scream, but the courage of seeing something that's going to require your action instead of waiting for a hero to come. It could be standing up for a colleague in a meeting. It could be being the first to apologize. If you're a child, it could be bringing in another kid who's sitting alone at lunch to sit with you. It's the courage to go first to create this energy of kindness when kindness is not present. It's so hard, but it's start within. Just today, go first. Elementary school kids can do it. Executives can do it. Anyone who wants to make a kinder world can make this happen.
So I did a little binging of your podcast before our
Oh,
interview,
thanks.
and there was an idea that you talked about a scenario where there was a customer who was very unkind to a someone that was checking them out because something wasn't available. Just we've all been in those scenarios where someone, for whatever reason, blows up over
Yep.
something in like a retail setting. And you talked about, how you felt about not having stepped in, that it made you complicit. But the thing that I thought was interesting is I think sometimes in the moment it can feel too risky to
Mhm.
actually intervene. So in the scenario of the meeting, it can feel too risky to intervene in that moment. But the other thing that I love that you highlighted is that the thing that you could have done, even if you didn't feel like you could intervene in that moment, is to check in on that person who received the unkindness. And so in the meeting scenario, it's like, okay, someone was mistreated in a meeting. Maybe you felt like you couldn't speak up for whatever reason.
Yep.
Can you just contact them afterwards and say, hey, that felt a little rough. How are you doing? Like that to me feels palatable. And what I liked is it's like a muscle. And when you practice doing that, then you get better and you build your skills. Tell me more about that, or anything that you think listeners would be helpful to listeners to think about in terms of maybe when they're seeing unkindness in the world.
Yeah, I love that you called that out, Christy, because I'm non-confrontational by nature. It's just kind of not my jam. So I find that in those situations where I'm questioning if I should jump in or do whatever I need to do to kind of mitigate or reduce this awful situation, the one thing I can do invariably that requires so much less courage than jumping in is just checking on the affected person after the fact. The grocery store situation is a perfect one. You see people screaming at cashiers or servers at the restaurant, or I was on a flight and someone was being rude to the flight attendant, so I went to the restroom and she was at the front of the plane. I was just like, hey, listen, I heard what that guy was saying. I am so sorry that you had to deal with that. And just know, like, everyone else on this plane appreciates you and sees you for the great work that you're doing. And I want to make sure that you know that too. Y'all, this woman almost started crying because all it took was someone to see her.
See her.
That courage on my end was so minimal.
Yeah.
Jumping in on a plane, I don't know this dude. I don't know what he's about. He could go
Right.
ahead and like choke me out. He's sitting behind me, right? I don't know what
Yeah.
he's gonna do. So to be able to do that and just realize that you always have agency to do something meaningful and powerful. And I don't know if either of you can relate to this. I suffer from something called hindsight brilliance, which is basically like I have the best clapback ever, ready to roll, but it's always like 45 minutes after the fact, which does me no good. So it's not, so I can always know what to say like an hour later, but I can always default to going to the person who's affected. I can always go to that person and give them some encouragement, some hope, and just a little bit of inkling that the whole of humanity is not depraved, mean, and unkind. And that's the power of just checking in on someone.
So this is a distinction that I love, and I'll tell you the way that I make it, the difference between being nice and being kind. And I want you to tell me your definition of that. And then I want to see if you have the same idea that I do of like the East Coast versus the West Coast.
Ooh.
Oh, yes, I've heard this before. I'm curious to see where you go with this.
So tell me your definition, and then that's what I want to jump into.
Okay. Oh, my definition. So, nice by definition means being polite and agreeable. And I hope that we can agree, like, that's a super low bar, right? Think of the worst human being you know, which should not take you very long. I guarantee you that person can say please or thank you. It's very, very simple. Kindness, on the other hand, is very, very different. Kindness is demonstrating through your actions that you genuinely care about another human being. And it is so much harder. The best way to look at this is nice is something that you do, kind is something that you are, right? So oftentimes you hear like, because I live in LA, like LA people are nice, but they're not kind. Whereas New Yorkers, on the other hand, they are not nice, but they are kind. And that difference is a real one. And I see it often. The way that I often look at it, we don't need nice people in this world. We really, really don't. I mean, nice is saying please and thank you while the world burns. And that to me is not going to move us forward. The ability to care about issues that don't affect you personally, the willingness to stand up to unkindness, all those things, the willingness to care about your mental health and prioritize it so you can show up for your best self, for your loved ones and for your colleagues and for the community that you live in. That's the hard stuff. That's the hard stuff that requires kindness. And even going further than that, niceness is the birthplace of passive aggressiveness. And you know this is true. There are people who you probably run into. You all have been friends since the Clinton administration, for crying out loud. So you have seen a lot, the two of you together. I guarantee you that even, I know the podcast is like 6.5 years old, but there's chances are that you have maybe some guests. I mean, you can't have all great guests. So maybe you have one guest who was just like, after you're done with the podcast, like, wow, Kristy and Danielle, that was actually a decent interview. Way better than the ones I saw when I was binging your podcast before I got on here. It's so nice to see that you're finally improving at this podcast thing after all these years. Bless your heart. Like, what the hell is that? That's what niceness looks like. It's not something that actually moves the needle. Kindness, on the other hand, is direct. It is clear. It allows someone to be able to speak their mind. And most importantly, it moves us closer to a world where people are seen, heard, and respected. And we need more of that right now.
Danielle, do you agree with the LA is nice and not kind, and New York?
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm in San Francisco, so I'm just a little bit north, right? And I'm from New York, and people will always say that people are, not nice in New York. I'm like, no, but if you are on the street in New York and you need help, somebody is going to stop and help you. People are kind.
That's right.
And there's a different, they're not going to be like, hey, how you doing? How's your day? Like, nobody cares about that. We don't have time for that. But if you actually
Right, let's go fix your flat tire.
yeah, if you need something else, we could do that. And
Yeah.
when I moved to California, and people will also tell you in New York, like, no, they'll tell you no. And no is kind, clear is kind, right? But like here, what I found was people would be like, I call it the California yes. So you'd say like, hey, do you want to meet up for a drink? And they'd be like, oh yeah, of course, of course, of course. And then when it came to, oh no, sorry. Or they'd just totally flake. And it was this,
Yep.
it took me a long time to figure that out of like, you can just tell me no. And I'm okay with that. Just say no. It's not going to hurt me in any way if you don't want to hang out with me. What hurts me is when I think that we're doing something. Like I have a very clear memory of like my first couple weeks here where somebody invited me to brunch and I was so excited because I had no friends and I had nothing to do. And I got up and I was all dressed and ready to go. And I texted and was like, okay, what time are we meeting? They're like, oh yeah, that's not happening. And I was so crushed because I was like, that was the only thing I had on my calendar all weekend. Like, what am I going to do? And then that became a thing that happened more often where people would just flake on things or people, but they think that they're being nice by saying, yes, 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 we want to do the thing. And I just don't find that. I find it different. And not that there are not kind people in California. There are wonderful people here in California. I just think the social norms are a little bit different.
I could not co-sign more deeply on what you just shared, Danielle. So and I didn't know that term. I'm shocked I didn't know. I've been out here for 21 years. The California, yes, I will be stealing from you and giving credit to you because it's so good. It is so common too. And it's like this constant like, oh yeah, yeah, of course let's hang out. I'll see you soon. Oh yeah, of course I'll make an intro to my agent. Oh yeah, I'll do whatever it may be. And I on a recent podcast episode of mine, I was talking about the kindest thing that we can often do is to say no. And what I mean by that is exactly what you just said, Danielle. It's like, how many times have we been strung on and people have been strung on by jobs that you applied for and they've already moved on or you have a candidate in mind and they're just stringing you along, or God forbid, a romantic interest who can't find the guts to be like, this isn't working. It's that no, that's what's cruel. Saying yes or stringing someone along instead of just being like, this isn't working, or you know what, I know we had plans this weekend. I just can't. I've got so much going on with work and my kiddos. I just can't do it. Or you know what, we already found another candidate that we're going to be moving forward with. Thank you for applying. It's these things that help to create a kinder world that, quite frankly, it requires us to have courage. It's so easy to say yes and then kick the can down the road. Like, God, I hope Danielle forgets about that because I'm not trying to see her. Like, that's unkind. And I think we need more people with courage and the guts to actually be direct with these type of situations.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I'm getting ready to move and leave San Francisco, and it's the only time people are actually making plans with me. like, and really keeping them. I'm like, sorry, I'm out of here in 4 weeks. So if we don't do it now, it's not going to happen. And people are like, oh, okay. And then like actually following through. So you just have to pretend move or something. I don't know.
Well, now that you have a container about how much time you have left, they're on the clock, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, I have to see her. It's really interesting. Like, but I've been here all this time. So now we're going to hang out when I'm gone in 4 weeks. Like, it's strange.
Can we talk about another idea related to kindness and speaking up? I think some people have a sense that going along to get along is kind, and when someone says or does something that's not appropriate or not kind, they just sort of let it, brush it off their shoulders instead of addressing it. And I'm in those moments, I think it is being complicit in unkindness being in the world to not say anything. So tell me a little bit about those harder, from the non-confrontational person. There is a time to speak. So what does that look like? And what's maybe something that someone could say if they see something either directed at themselves or others? How would you recommend people approach it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm seeing more often now are folks being more willing to speak up when they see things. The holidays passed a few months ago, and that is often considered the most polarizing time of the year for people. They're with relatives, extended family with maybe different political views or what have you. And if folks say things you should have, first of all, a very clear red line of what is considered inappropriate and not acceptable. So for me personally, like, if you're going to question my humanity or the humanity of others, if you are going to demonize like people who are part of the LGBTQ community or any of those type of things that are just out of pocket, like, we can talk politics, meaning like zoning laws, or hey, should we put like all of our town funds into this new stadium? Let's go. But if you're going to be like, these people are not human and shouldn't deserve the same rights as the rest of us, to me, that is a red line that I'm not willing to accept. And so one thing that I'm clear to say is like, hey, listen, whenever I'm going to give a kind of a fictional example. So I know, hey, we're bringing up trans rights right now, and I know that these conversations can get a little bit sticky. Can we agree to stay respectful if we're going to talk about this, even if my views on trans rights are different than yours? Now, it's interesting. If you were to do it that way, what could happen is a couple of things. Uncle George, we'll make him up, could be like, screw you, if you think these people are human, then you're gross. Okay, well then conversation is over. And not only is it over, but I'm cool to be like, I'm fitting to get you out of my house right now. Like, this is not what we do here. And that's okay. There's like, well, shouldn't we be okay with other people's views? Look, obviously, but if it's going to eliminate the need to see someone's humanity, that's crossing the line. That's not politics anymore. That's just cruel and mean-spirited. So, or he could be like, hey, okay, fine, I'll listen to what you have to say. And then you share your point, and then you can have a conversation that way. But I'm quick these days, even though I'm not confrontational. But you said something earlier, Kristy, which is really important. It's kind of like building a muscle, right? Like, you go to the gym, you get a little stronger. So something that you couldn't lift, there's weights that if you go to the gym consistently that you're lifting now that you couldn't lift 6 months ago. The same idea comes with this courage stuff. Like, oh God, I would never think about speaking up to Uncle George. But if you do things in small increments, like maybe speaking up and asking for a discount when you go to a restaurant, like small acts of courage that you can build upon. So when you finally get to that final boss battle with Uncle George at Thanksgiving, you're more willing to have that conversation. Hey, listen, that's unacceptable. I'm not okay with you talking about trans people like that, whatever it may be. And again, we can disagree. We don't have to agree on everything. It's just when it crosses the line of not seeing people's humanity or just being outright hateful, we have to be willing to say something, because my all-time favorite quote is, what we allow is what will continue. And if we're really upset about the unkindness in the world and we're allowing people just to get away saying really awful, mean-spirited things, then unfortunately it's going to continue. We have no one to blame but ourselves.
Okay, well, maybe I have recency bias, but the podcast I listened to this morning from you had a great phrase that I've heard others share as well. When someone says something that's very clearly off, and you ask them to explain it, and you just say, "Hey,
Oh, I
what do you
love
mean
it.
by that?"
That's my all-time favorite.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
because it actually comes from a place that gives them the benefit of the doubt, right?
It
That they
does.
didn't actually know what they were saying was not appropriate. And it gives them a beat to reflect
Hmm.
in a way that's not unkind to them.
I'll give you a good example that happened. I speak for a living, as mentioned, and I was at an event. This was a little while ago, and someone came up to me after my talk, and she had a Southern accent, and she's like, "Oh my goodness, Shola! Oh, I was listening to you talking. Oh my gosh, you speak so well. You are so articulate. Oh my goodness. Oh, you speak so well." Now, mind you, some people might listen to that like, well, she gave you a compliment. What's the big deal? Y'all, she looked at me like I was a talking a hippopotamus in the zoo, right? Like, whoa, you can actually speak? Like, whoa. It was like, it wasn't a compliment, it was shock. And I often know where that comes from, right? There was another speaker that spoke before me who doesn't look like me. Let's go with that. And there was no such compliments being thrown this person's way. So I asked her, I was like, oh, I speak so, what do you mean by that? But I mean, I mean, I speak for a living. Shouldn't I speak well? Would you be as shocked if you went to your accountant to get your taxes done and they did your taxes correctly? Would you be shocked if the mechanic who just fixed your sink knows how to use a screwdriver? Like, I'm just trying to understand where this is coming from. My thing is this, Danielle and Kristy, I am big on discomfort should be shared, right? So if you're going to make me uncomfortable and I did not ask for any of this, then it's important to make this a shared experience, because the hope is that my discomfort now becoming your discomfort will hopefully ring some sort of bell with you, so that when you decide to say awful things or unkind things or things that don't let you think before speaking, you'll then take a beat and be like, I shouldn't say this, or maybe I should word it differently. I mean, I've told you're articulate for a black person. I've been told all sorts of crazy things. And when you ask that question, back to what you just said, Kristy, it's a kind way to do a little bit of self-reflection that I don't have to use any of my emotional labor to do. You get to do that work. And I get to sit back and be like, you're giving me a gift that I don't want. I'm like, oh, no, fam, you take it. Open it. Let me know what's inside. And now she has to open it and be like, oh, God, this is awful. Yeah, tell me what's in there again. Explain that to me. And that's what I'm hoping for, is that self-reflection. If I were to scream at her, you racist, you're saying I speak well, I know what you mean by that. Like, dude, then no one wins. Now I'm the jerk. She's sitting here like, dude, I was trying to give this guy a compliment. Now he's gonna. Instead, I want her to be aware of, like, oftentimes that's a trope that most people don't expect black people to speak well. So when I say like you're articulate, it's coming off as a way that's kind of condescending instead of complimentary, and you should be aware of that. I don't have to say that. She now has to go and work through that on her own. That's why that question is so powerful.
It's funny.
And I was like, you should have been like, oh, they paid me a lot of money to stand on that stage.
And speak.
Also.
It's funny,
Fair.
when I thought about doing a podcast episode about kindness, it feels like a topic that would be not the opposite of small talk, right? Like, people, I think of kindness as, oh, this cute idea to be
Oh yeah.
kind, but it is very much the opposite of small talk.
It is. I think that's the thing, though, right? Kindness needs a really better PR and a desperate need for rebranding, because it just comes off as like high fives and free hugs, which I'm about that life, man. That's all cool. But the kindness that's going to change the world that we're all navigating right now is so much different. It's going to be so much more than the basic niceties of the world. It's going to have to show that we demonstratively care about other people in a meaningful way. I get so fired up about this because, as mentioned at the top of the episode, I'm a highly sensitive person. I struggle with this stuff. So I want to feel kindness towards me, and I know how much that's transformed my life when I've received it. And if I can do that work for other people, then hopefully I can have them feel the same feeling that I feel as well.
Thank you, Shola, for being here. This was an incredibly kind conversation, and I hope that our listeners are walking away with some new tools to use, and also just walking around being a little bit kinder in the world to themselves and to everyone else.
Ah, that would be a dream, Danielle. Thank you for that. Much appreciated.
If you want to have more of your own opposite of small talk conversations, we can help.
We've created a starter pack of big talk questions that you can download and use to ditch the boring small talk and create more meaningful conversations with the people around you. Get it in the link below. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of this topic and what you'd like to hear about next. Thanks for watching.
Stay curious and talk big.